I want to have that difficult conversation with you that families need to have around dining room tables. You know, the one that we keep putting off because we don't want to upset anybody, but the crisis builds and builds and builds, and so you finally have to have the talk. Well, the talk is the human behaviors that are keeping us from engaging the climate crisis. And there's one that I call the conspiracy of silence. There's pressure within a group not to make other people uncomfortable. There's pressure in a group not to raise subjects that'll make us uncomfortable. That's the climate crisis. I'll give you an example. A number of years ago, I was in Colombia as part of a Christian peacemaker delegation. A mining village up in the Andes had invited us up to be a presence between them and the Colombian army, because they were afraid the Colombian army was going to move them off their land so that a corporation could go after what they've been mining. And what they mine is gold, really just simply gold dust. And they gave us a tour of how they did that. And it involves hand digging huge amounts of dirt and then grinding it with mercury, because the mercury attracts the gold out of the dirt, and then washing away the dirt, and then burning the residue to vaporize off the mercury and the other contaminants and wind up with the gold, and then to further refine it. We went on that tour seeing every step of their process, and my colleagues were really, really impressed at how hard they worked and how ingenious they were in doing this. And I was horrified, because before I took this path into ministry, I was an engineer and a plant manager in the chemical industry. And so I knew the hazards they were doing. I could see that they were contaminating their water, their soil, and their air with mercury and the other reagents. I could see how they were poisoning themselves and destroying their kids' brains and ruining that mountainside for generations to come. But I was a guest. Heck, I couldn't even speak Spanish. I was there to listen and to be a presence. So I resolved to be quiet. We went out and met with the Colombian army in the jungle. And my role was to keep an eye on the army snipers to see if they were going to shoot at us. What good that would do, I don't know, but they had to give me a role. We came back and we met with the village council to tell them what the army's response was to their concerns. And my colleagues who were fluent in Spanish were leading the meeting, and I'm sitting there saying, I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to be quiet. I can't be quiet. And I stood up and I asked for an interpreter, and I said, you're going to have to excuse me, but I can no longer be quiet. I see what you're doing in how you mine and how you refine that gold. And I have to tell you, you're contaminating the soil and the water and the air. You're destroying the lives of your very children, their brains, as well as your own lives. And you're ruining this mountain for generations to come. You have to find a different way. And there was absolute silence in the room. And I asked a colleague who was fluent in Spanish, another pastor, I said, could you offer a word of comfort? And he said, wait, they're processing, wait. And just then the village president stood up and said, you know what? What that pastor says is the truth that we all know, we just refuse to talk about it. So the next evening, they called together the entire village at a town hall meeting so that I, a stranger in their midst, could speak the truth that they already knew. They just refused to talk about it. I come away from that experience wondering, what is the chances that a village up in the Andes would ask for a Christian peacemaker team, and on that team would be a former chemical plant manager that could point out and speak the difficult truths that they already knew? I said, no, dummy. That's God's Spirit at work in the world. That's what launched me into this ministry. Knowing that God is calling us forth to speak the difficult truths that we all know we just refuse to talk about. Because if we think we don't talk about it, then they don't exist, or at least we don't have to deal with them today. The difficult truth of the climate crisis is that our way of life, our fundamental way of life, is destroying the world. It's destroying God's good creation. It's destroying our children's future. And we're pretending it isn't. The signs are all around us. The smokestacks, the exhaust pipes that we say are good, all those oil trains and the coal trains which are going past on the rails, and you know all that stuff has to be burned and thrown up in the air. The signs are there. We just refuse to talk about them. The conspiracy of silence. We've got to break that conversation out into the public. We have to do it from the pulpit. We have to do it from the church fellowship hall. We have to do it from the neighborhood fence, from the public square, and around the dining room table. We have to engage in this difficult conversation that we've been postponing until the crisis becomes so big we can't avoid it. That's where we're at now. Have the conversation.